Hey friends, welcome to the first in a 78 video series on the cards of the tarot. This is not meant to be an all-inclusive video diving deep into the origins of tarot, but more like a primer course for those starting out or for those who may be struggling to connect with the decks they felt called to. Using the 12 decks I currently own, we will go through each card of the major and minor arcana, looking at the difference between the decks and talking about how both artist rendition and reader interpretation of the card can change its meaning in the course of a reading. I will also be sharing a few of my personal interpretations along the way because I cannot resist talking about myself. And just for funsies, I've thrown in a bonus card from the Spirit Halloween deck. It's a novelty deck. It's under $9 as of 2020, and it's hilarious. I feel deeply that novelty decks can have value in a reading. And also, last but not least, I love the Queen of Cups in this deck, which is a Gorgon. And I am knee-deep into my Medusa phase. Consider this your warning for sexually explicit material and the occasional foul-mouthed humor or words. I currently use two NSFW tarot decks. They are the Tarot of Sexual Magic and Eros Tarot. The Tarot of Sexual Magic I consider softcore, meaning lingerie or romanticized pictures of lovemaking. Eros Tarot, however, is definitely what I consider hardcore, and you'll see why as we get to other cards. While this series is pretty much an overview of tarot and not sexual in nature in and of itself, those two decks very much are. If you're uncomfortable with sexual situations or explicit material, even if it's artistic, then perhaps this series is not for you. Series is also not geared nor meant for those under 18. Sorry, kids. I will be consulting the books or booklets that came with each deck if provided, as well as the Easy Tarot Handbook by Josephine Ellershaw and the Library of Esoterica by Jessica Hundley. The decks I use will be listed in the description box, but I don't provide links as the majority of them came from Amazon. Any Kickstarter decks or specially acquired Etsy decks, I will have the link. So, the first card, or depending on the deck, the last card of the major arcana is the Fool. A major arcana are often called trump or court cards. They are the equivalent to the royalty cards in the traditional playing card deck. Like so. The description of the Fool card is typically based off the Rider-Waite Smith decks. You may see a variety of combination of these three decks, example Rider-Waite, Waite-Smith, etc. But this is like the OG definition used for all other decks. This is the Rosetta Stone, which also makes reading the more obscure decks difficult for some people. Case in point, a friend of mine loves rabbits and has a couple of rabbit-themed tarot decks. Instead of swords or wands / staves / staffs, cups and coins / pentacles, the suits are daisies, carrots, tulips, and discs. And while she felt called to this deck, it is hard for her to read because it's like translating English and Times New Roman to Webdings 2 in your head every time you look at a card. I personally have two decks that I absolutely love. The Urban Tarot and the Crow Tarot. I love them, but it takes me a little bit longer to parse the meanings because the imagery is themed around the artistic vision and not based on the Rider-Waite-Smith decks. With these decks, I use more intuitive images and the feelings that I get. I will also have to consult the book or description packets for these cards more often as well, which can slow down a reading. There are also decks that take a little bit of a poetic license. Case in point, the Lover's Path Tarot. In this deck, the Fool is changed to Innocence, and while the name is changed and the attributes pretty much stay the same, it's still difficult for me to make that translation sometimes. It is about innocence. It's literally written right there. But it's also about trust and optimism and new ventures, which is what the Fool is about. And to me, this is a romance deck, so it's going to be about a romantic innocence, a romantic trust, a romantic optimism. But it can also change in the course of a reading depending on the card that came before, the card that comes after, and the question asked. So it ebbs and flows. And the Fool, number 0, traditionally is a card of innocence. He is unaware of the danger of lurking ahead, unconcerned with where he has been or where he is going. It also is a card representing unexpected opportunities and fresh starts and the possibility of new adventures. The Easy Tarot Handbook calls this the very moment before creation. The only unnumbered card in the deck, yet 0, is also the endless cycle and circle of life. It is without beginning or end. It's like the breath you take before jumping off the highest diving board at the pool or sending that risky text to someone late on a Friday night. It is that moment of exhilarating expectation before you commit to your course of action. The Everyday Witch Tarot tells us that this card in a reading can mean that you are potentially or hesitating or procrastinating a decision or action, and sometimes you just need to take a leap of faith. This can be inferred by the imagery depicted as well, and one of the reasons, because of the change in meanings, is why I use multiple decks during any card spread or card reading that I do. In the Tarot of Sexual Magic, the Fool represents an erotic outburst and surrendering to love. At least that's what the packet says. Basically, quote unquote, willingness and spontaneity. But for me, the willingness and spontaneity is the couple in the background. Right there. The Fool is just doop-a-doop-a-doop, walking along the precipice, boop-a-doop-a-doop-a-doop, doing his thing and oblivious to what's going on in the background. And so you would take that into point when you're doing your sexual or, relationship spread. In the Crow Tarot, the Fool again is about innocence and beginnings, but with the storm imagery in the background, it gives a more somber meaning of keep the faith and you will make it through the storm. In the Urban Tarot, we are back on the ledge. This card not only gives me major BBC Sherlock vibes, Reichenbach fall anyone, but it also makes me very anxious, and I worry for the person on the ledge. Like, what decision have they been making that brought them to the ledge in the first place? Do they have all the information they need? It makes me want to tell them to take a step back and reevaluate their course of action, because I feel they don't have the information they need at this time, and they could be making a very potentially risky decision. The Jane Austen Tarot. While not an actual tarot deck, as there are only 53 cards based off traditional playing cards, the Joker is in place of the Fool, and the card description says beginnings. Like, literally, that's all it says, beginnings. But to me, the imagery brings to mind endings. This person is walking away. They aren't serious about sticking around and have foolishly gone off into the storm. They are joking or playing with someone's affections. The Eros Tarot depicts two nude individuals frolicking on a beach. There is less of the feeling of have faith and more of an uninhibited innocence. They are rejoicing in the act of simply being. The water is calm, and the sun gives the impression of both simultaneously setting and rising. So again, it brings us back to endings and beginnings. The overall meaning stays the same. Once you take a deeper look into the cards and focus on the question that was asked in the reading that you're doing. And now you're probably thinking, Tiny Mike Tarot, you didn't talk about what the card means when it's reversed. Well, you see, Timmy, that's because I typically don't read reversals. In fact, I have a couple of tarot decks that don't have reversible art on the back at all. So it's obvious which cards are reversed when you're pulling from a deck, and you can absolutely ignore them if you were a less scrupulous nature. Another reason why is because one of the reversal meanings for the Fool is naivety, which means innocence. Now, I'm not sponsored, but biddytarot.com is my go-to online tarot check when I don't feel like digging up the book or don't have one handy. It gives an excellent breakdown of reading reversals and explains much better than I can about the externally expressed and internally expressed energy meaning of the card. I'll put a link in the description so you can check it out. I heartily support it. Suffice to say, reading reversals can add a whole new layer to your readings, and I totally stole that quote from Biddy Tarot, and eventually I will probably do that as well, because knowledge is power. Now, I use certain decks for certain types of reading. The heavily themed one of sex and romance are obviously used for sex and love readings. Boom, boom, boom. And sometimes when I'm feeling froggy, I'll throw in the glittery shit too, because damn, I am a tart for that shit. I wouldn't use these if I were asking about career advice or family stuff. I mean, I would use this any day of the week, but it's got a very romantic vibe to me. The only exception was my original Jane Austen tarot deck. Like, I miss this deck so much every day. And it's sadly out of print now and super expensive to find. And I have the book and the box, but the cards were lost after I transferred them to a cloth bag. So, rip. And I could feel the sighs of dismay echoing all around me. No, you do not have to memorize all the meanings of the cards of the tarot. You don't. I'm going to say it again. You don't have to memorize all the meanings of the cards of the tarot. But the more familiar you become with your own deck, the easier it will be for you to understand the meanings by the imagery alone. I know readers who have zero idea of what the cards traditionally mean. They just go by what they see and what they feel and what the images tell them in regards to the question that's being asked. I suggest, in my humble opinion, starting out with a deck with images based off the Rider-Waite-Smith decks. Again, it's like the Rosetta Stone, but you don't have to. This is just what works for me, and I feel that once you're familiar with that imagery, it will be easier for you to segue to other more artistic or obscure decks based on that original imagery description. So that's it for today, everyone. I hope you found this helpful. I hope you found this enjoyable, and I've just got a few things for you to think about. 1, what is your favorite deck? 2, what deck won't you ever touch again and why? And 3, what is your interpretation of the Spirit Halloween deck, the Fool? And what do you feel intuitively when you look at him? Let me know in the comments. See you next time. Bye-bye.